Good afternoon and welcome to the dialogue series, the Africa is Dialogue series on colorism. This is part 4. I am Fatia. I am the founder and director of the World Africultural Community Project, which is an arts, culture, and social impact organization based in the Tennessee area of the US, Nashville area to be more specific. And I just want to welcome everyone in today. Thank you for joining us. To start with, we'll just do some brief introductions. So just let us know who you are. Let's see, what is your cultural background, your cultural heritage? Where were you born, for instance, and where you live now? And for those who I have not met before, so I'm Fatia. I was born and raised in the Brooklyn, New York area. I currently live in the Nashville, Tennessee area. My background for at least 3 to 4 generations is Southern US. Possibly we have ancestors who came over from the western part of Africa, of course, but Equatorial Guinea and Gabon is what I've had verified through DNA tests so far on my mother's side of the family. I was not sure about my father's side yet, but generally just Southern US by way of New York. So, and Michael, would you go next, please?
Yes, of course, thank you. So I'm Michael Groenewoud, born and raised in Amsterdam, also still live in Amsterdam, in the Netherlands. And my background is Afro-Surinamese. So Suriname country in South America, even though it's in South America, it's considered a part of the Caribbean because culturally we are closer to the Caribbean nations than we are to the Latin American nations. And yeah, the connection with the Netherlands is quite simple, that they were quite active during slavery and colonialism, and Suriname was one of their colonies where they enslaved Africans, and those were my ancestors then. Few generations of my ancestors were enslaved there, so that's how the connection with the Netherlands was established, and that's why we are here now. So yeah, I think that's in short. I'm glad to be here. I know all of you, so that's a nice panel to be part of. So yeah, looking forward to chatting with you.
Thank you. And Miss Aya.
Hi, everyone. It's wonderful to be here. My name is Aya, and I live in Los Angeles, California. My ethnic background is I am Nigerian, and in Nigeria, there are many ethnicities, right? So nationally, we were colonized by the British and garnered independence in 1960. So nationally, we're Nigerian, and ethnically, my parents are from 2 different smaller tribes, 2 different small ethnic groups. But I've been living and have been here I've always been here in the US. And so I guess I'm a Nigerian American, and I probably more so equally identify with the Black American experience, because that's what people think I am like when they see me. Especially before I changed especially before I took on my married name, and now, yeah. So that's that. It's good to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And last but definitely not least is our co-host for today, Dr. Sarah. And I'm so happy you're here today. So thank you. And if you would please just introduce yourself to everyone, appreciate it.
Hello, everyone. I am Sarah, the founder of Colorism Healing. I was born in Austin, Texas, but raised in South Louisiana, the Lafayette, Baton Rouge, New Orleans, I-10 stretch of Louisiana. And my family goes back several generations in that region of the country. Based on my mom's DNA tests, my more distant ancestry is primarily Nigeria and Ghana, with lots of other West African countries and tribes sprinkled in there. And I am currently a nomad, full-time nomad, but my present location on this call is the Dallas-Fort Worth area of Texas.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you, thank you. And again, welcome to all of you. I would love to start with, well, let me just say that we keep these conversations pretty casual because we want to talk to everyday people. We want to talk, to brothers and sisters globally. So we keep this very casual. I do want to start with asking Dr. Sarah, can you share a definition of what we mean when we refer to the term of colorism, please?
Yeah, so since this is casual, I want to say hi to our beautiful little siblings there. So a simple, straightforward definition of colorism is that it's a social system that privileges people with lighter skin tones and marginalizes people with darker skin tones. And when I say a system of privilege, I mean there are things like inequalities in pay, healthcare, jobs, educational attainment, and that sort of thing, based on skin tone, even of people who identify the same racially or ethnically.
Gotcha. Thank you. Thank you. So when we decided to talk about this and, talk about it and bring it out, try to reach people from across the globe, we wanted to focus in on the impact of colorism on self-esteem. The last session we did, excuse me, we targeted in a little bit more on how colorism presents itself within our closer circles. So within families, within our close social circles, within our close communities. So I wanted to start out with kind of asking you all, what experiences have you had with colorism within your close circles, or what have you observed happening with others?
So within my immediate family, which was my mom, my older sister, my older brother, we are different skin tones. My brother and I are darker skin. My mom and my sister are lighter skin. My dad is also dark skinned, but he didn't grow up in the nuclear household. Or he didn't grow up. Obviously, he didn't grow up in my household. He wasn't present in my household when I was growing up. But I think fortunately, we didn't perpetuate colorism against each other, but because we were different skin tones, other people did. And so like very common ones that seem subtle or that seem like you can like kind of gloss over them are, oh, I didn't know you all were related. And just the total shock of people when they find out that my sister is my sister or that my mom is my mom. People are more likely to think that my sister is I'm a cousin, right? Or I'm like a friend of the family. And I think even at times people have thought that my sister and I were like romantic partners before they would assume that we were sisters, right? And then even thinking about an experience I had in like first grade, a quote unquote friend, the term frenemy, who was not Black. I don't know if she was white or not, but she wasn't Black. And she and I got in an argument and she went sit next to my sister and said, well, that's why I like your sister better than you because she's white and you're Black, right? So in her first grade mind, my sister was light enough to pass, quote unquote, pass as white or be perceived as white. And I think because I had a sister who was so much lighter than me and a mom who's so much lighter than me, I might have experienced or like been able to see very clearly the stark contrast and how people treated me. Because when I was 5, I remember some great aunts like saying how, oh, my sister's gonna be a heartbreaker someday and my mom's gonna have to watch out for her, because she's so cute and that kind of thing. And even at 5, my mom said I was like, well, that's because she's light skinned, right? And so apparently from a very early age, I had seen that pattern of treatment often enough to be able to articulate it even as a young child. So again, I was blessed because there are people who get it from their own moms, who get it from their own sisters. So I was blessed not to have that aspect, but because my sister in particular was a different skin tone than me, it's happened like very, very often in terms of how people treated me and her very differently.
Wow. Anybody else?
Well, I definitely did get it from my mom. So my mom my grandmother, my mom's mom, was pretty fair. So I'm almost certain that there was some type of sexual assault in my old, like that, like maybe her mom or something like that. Cause she was like really fair for people in the community at the time. And, um, and so my mom was like, my mom and her brothers were fairer, and my dad is pretty dark, like, you know. And one of the things growing up, my mom was insistent that I use skin bleaching cream, like insistent, like she would like be pushing on me. And what I think is always interesting to me is that I'm not sure where I always think to myself, why did I say no? Because I don't know why I was saying no. But I just remember telling my mom, like, Mom, I'm Black. Like, I don't know what to tell you, I'm Black. Like, I can't be putting on some skin bleaching cream. Because she would even explain it to me that you need to keep using it. And I'm like, that's ridiculous and absurd. I can't do that. And I think, you know, it culminated, I was, you know, I don't know, like I was going to prom or something. And my mom just looked at me and she said, well, you know, you're not ugly because, you know, your complexion. Like she was like, you're not, like, even though you're dark, you're not ugly. Like, you know? And I was like, dang. Like, and that's just where she was at. You know, that's just really where she was at. It wasn't like, that's just really what she believes, I think, you know? And I've talked about her in the past tense because she has passed on. But that's just really where she was at. And it was hurtful. It was really hurtful. It was really hurtful. And of course, I was my mom's only daughter. I have two brothers. One passed away when I was young. And apparently the brother that passed away was very fair like her. And so she rarely ever talked about that brother. But the one time she did, she was like, and he was so fair and he looked like me. Like, you know? And so colorism is extremely damaging. You know, it's extremely damaging because, you know, it's like, where does this all come from? It's like, you really think my value is based on what I look like? Forget about my complexion, just what I look like. You really are like basing my value and my access to resources and my access to love and acceptance and celebration to like this, I mean, like I love my skin complexion, but like to this, like really, like that's pathetic. And of course, I remember though, she just really always, you know, highlighted, like she always like took on other young people my age. Like, so whatever age I was, she would take on other young people, other girls my age who were lighter, always, you know? And so even right before she died, she was going to Nigeria and she was taking this girl who is biracial, mixed race. And I just couldn't believe it. I was like, you like, you know, this girl doesn't care about you like I do. Like, so anyway, I say all that because I did get it from my mom, you know, and it complicated our relationship. And when I was growing up, I didn't have any language to talk about it. So I didn't even know, I didn't have any language. So I'm only getting the language now. And so I'm able to talk about it now. But the sad thing to me is back then, I just internalized it. So I think it would have been much easier for me. I mean, so now I'm like obsessed with talking about it because if you're experiencing it and you're like, oh, that's what it is, you have the option to not have to internalize it, you know? And so, yeah, you know, and one of the things that I really appreciate about Dr. Webb is, well, I just randomly ran into her on LinkedIn, like, you know, and up until that time, I never had language for it, like ever, like, you know, and so when I'm like listening to her and I'm like, this is exactly what my whole life has been like. And I was recently watching an interview with a panel of people talking about colorism. And one of the girls on the panel, she was like, there's real benefits to being lighter. And why? Like real, like this is not a fake thing. You know, of course, there's people on the panel like gaslighting, like, and they happen to be dark-skinned Black men gaslighting everyone, like, oh, that's not true. And it's like, and it's like, wow, I shouldn't even have to explain this to you. I shouldn't, oh, it's just my preference. Why? I'm not even here to say that's not your preference. I'm here to say, where does that preference come from?
Right.
And I'm here to say that, like, I'm not European. You're not European. We can't look like that. So, you know, so yeah, it did happen to me in my family, and I don't harbor any unforgiveness towards my mom, but it seriously damaged me.
So with your mom, you said your mom is fairer than you, correct? So did she receive, do you think, or did
I
she?
don't even know if she was actually fairer than me, because one time I saw a picture of her when she was like young, my age, and she was like my complexion, right? And I realized then, so this like after she passed away, I realized she'd always been bleaching. But so as long as I knew her, my grandmother, I don't think bleached. My grandmother, I do think, is just naturally fair. She's like, she was fair, like, you know. But I think, you know, she maybe she's a little bit lighter than me, but I think she would bleach to keep that up, basically, is what I'm trying to say.
Wow, that's intense. That's intense, because I was going to ask whether or not she ever spoke of favoritism, for, you know, because she was lighter. But if she naturally wasn't, and she was bleaching herself, but then her mother was lighter, like what would, and, you know, just out of curiosity, thinking about what that dynamic between the two of them may have been. So it's kind of interesting to kind of pinpoint where it's coming from with individuals. Thank you for sharing that. Michael, did you have any particular instances that you can reflect on?
Of course, yes. So that was quite painful to hear, of course, your experiences. And unfortunately, I know that, yeah, that it does happen. I've been lucky in that sense that when I look at my core family, so my brothers, my brother, my sisters, and my mother, we grew up together. I did not experience colorism from them. And actually, like looking back, it's also interesting for me. Like from a very young age, I was aware of racism. I knew what that was. But when I looked at Black people, I always thought like, okay, we are one. That's how I grew up. That's how I thought that we were. But so the first time that I encountered colorism was actually from other Black people, but that was in school, from school children. But because I never really looked at Black people like that, when I then encountered that, I was like, I didn't really understand initially what was going on. And only later on, I was able to determine like, oh, wow, this is because I am darker skinned than them, that they treated me then in a negative way, or that they said certain things. But initially, I was like, I couldn't figure it out, because like I knew racism. I knew that from a very, very young age. I remember when I was 3 or 4 years old already understood that. But colorism, like, because I did not get that from my home, only later on I found out. So that's like that was quite a shock, because that was a big disappointment in a sense, because like, yeah, it's when you look at all Black people as one, and then you experience that, it's like, wow, we are not all one. And it's yeah, when I look at myself, like I find also like it's really damaging also in the sense like, okay, because we already have facing that struggle as Black people against white people, especially like, for instance, we are a big minority in the Netherlands. But when you then engage in those kinds of behaviors, you're basically, yeah, tearing yourself down and making yourself even weaker in that fight against that bigger opponent that you're facing. So I remember it was quite a shock when I found out, but at the same time, it was, yeah, good to know that that's also part of the reality. But yeah, but I'm lucky that I didn't get in my family. One thing that is interesting about me personally is that when I was a baby, when I was born, like the first few weeks, I actually was very light skinned, and even my hair was different. It was wavy. So like when people see that picture, that's a different Michael, and that's also interesting. Like with yeah, of course they think like babies are born Black, but actually when we are born, we can be very light skinned, and it might take some time before actually like you are the way that you look when you are grown. But looking back, it's interesting, because when I look at that picture when I was 2 years old, then 2 weeks old, then I always think like, okay, knowing what I know now of the world, it's interesting like that I know for a fact now that the way that I would have been treated would be very different if I had remained as the way that it was back then. And so that is yeah, interesting to reflect upon how the world treats you. And so yeah, that's some of the things that I can say. Like didn't get it from my family. That was lucky. but I did encounter it from other Black people, and because I know all of you, like what I said before with you, like if I did not grow up in the Netherlands, but in Suriname, where my family's from, I know that I would have encountered it way more, because like in the Caribbean, colorism is way stronger. And then there you can also say like there's institutionalized colorism, just like we talk about institutionalized racism. Like in the Netherlands, like I experienced colorism, but those people had no power. Like they were like, maybe it's in school, so that's nice. But like when I'm in the job market, it's not like people that are higher ups or lighter skinned Black people that have some power, because they don't. This, all those places I encounter white people. But if I was in Suriname, then I would encounter the institutionalized colorism also. And that's of course a very different thing, because then it would be like, yeah, it will impact your job or the income that you can make or the progression that you will get in jobs just based on your skin tone. So that's also an interesting thing to consider. Like when I think about colorism, like I know what it is, but I also know that if I would actually be in the country that my family for a few generations were in, then I would have really, really experienced it way more than I do now. So that's so yeah, I'll leave it at that for now.
Thank you for sharing that. So Dr. Sarah, what do you think, what do you believe are the roots of colorism, let me say color bias behavior? So we've got the colorism that is that we receive from people outside of our race. Then we've got colorism that we experience within our race. So what do you believe are some of the roots to those different behaviors and treatments?
So because of the context of this conversation, I'll focus on the Black diaspora, because when you look at cross-culturally and like all nations and all ethnicities, people talk about like caste systems in India and Asia, for example, as being the root of colorism there. But even in that, global context, we talk about how colonization and the rise of like the global beauty industry, the global media industry, like Hollywood, really exacerbated that trend even for them. But most certainly for people in the Black diaspora, the impact of colonization was a tool or a way for colonization to be effective, was for the target groups or for the people that they were trying to oppress to actually believe that they deserve their oppression, to actually believe in the so-called myth or the myth of white supremacy, right? And so it wasn't just enough for white people themselves to think they were superior. They needed all the people around the world they were trying to oppress to also believe that narrative. And so that narrative came about through control of media, through control of so-called science. We would now call it pseudoscience, right? But quote unquote anthropology, where they were like studying indigenous, tribes and things like that. And then thinking about them being able to control like what was considered medical science, them being able to control what was considered medical fact. And I use this quote by Thomas Jefferson a lot, where, based on that, anthropology and that pseudoscience, they really believe that there was this inherent difference in the races. And they talk about how color, our skin tone, is one of the primary markers of that difference, of that inherent difference. Things like hair texture being proof of the difference in races, right? So they really relied heavily on our physical features to distinguish between races in the first place. So I'll say that. But then the second thing is, as Aya mentioned, a lot of it also came through physical violence, right? And so in order to brainwash people, it's more effective if you have complete control. And so look at something like the transatlantic slave trade, weapons, war, genocides. It wasn't just narrative violence, but it was also physical violence that, as a way of survival, Black people had to start to take on different approaches to survive, right? And thinking about how not only with that violence, such as rape, that it was a tool not only to brainwash people and to break our spirits and our souls and to create rifts amongst our families, like really like literally separating families and, you know, not allowing us to speak our native tongue when we were kidnapped and brought here. So many violent, vile, and vicious ways that they alienated us from each other and from ourselves, from our identities and from our physical bodies. But then also because of the capitalist nature of the slave trade as well, they needed more enforced labor. They needed more unpaid, uncompensated labor. They needed more enslaved people. And so it behooved them to create things like the one-drop rule, or to create things like the mestizo class or mulatto class, depending on where in the diaspora you are, right? So not all of them use the rule of hypodescent, but it was this constant gradation, right? Like constantly articulating the spectrum relative to whiteness, right? And so even if you were mixed race, it was, you were classified and defined in terms of your value, not just your identity, but your value based on that, respective to whiteness. And again, this was only effective because they had seized control of capital, of land, of resources, right? And so again, I think for our ancestors, our foreparents, a lot of the internalization started out just as a matter of survival. There's this term called dissemblance, where you pretend like you're playing along, right? Like even if you don't believe it, you know, in order to survive the day without, you know, being hung or lynched, you're going to play along, right? Just so that you can make it home at night. And we know that even today in terms of getting stopped by the cops, sometimes you do what you have to do to make it home safely, right? And so, but I think at some point, and I don't think it's a clearly defined like day or year, but at some point, what we were doing for survival started to become an internalized belief system, right? Like, well, yeah, this is inherently good, this is inherently right. But also, I think, and again, especially for people in the diaspora, if all you see is evidence of the myth of white supremacy, if all you see are people who look like you on the news and, you know, handcuffs, right? Or, you know, on ads and propaganda, you know, minstrel shows and things like that, then we really were denied the evidence of an alternative reality, right? And Malcolm X talks about how, he talks about this in one of his last speeches, it was their ability to control the image. They used imagery. And not only that, I love the saying, you know, you can't hate the roots of the tree and not hate the tree itself. So a large part of that campaign too was making Black people in the diaspora who were disconnected from the continent of Africa perceive Africa as this terrible place. And so we were also like, I'm not African. I remember growing up in school and it was an insult to tell someone you look like you're from Africa, right? And of course, as a dark-skinned Black person, I would get that a lot. And are, you know, very derogatory terms related to the continent of where our ancestors were from. And so there's this campaign of rhetoric, rhetorical campaign, but also a campaign of violence, whether it was lynchings or, you know, burning crosses in people's yards or just the physical enslavement of people's bodies, where we're going to make you hate everything about yourself, the way you look, where you come from, the land you come from, the languages you speak, the food you eat. We're going to stigmatize all of it. We're going to shame you for all of it. And also deny you access to capital and resources if you try to retain your pride and your expression of those things. And so I say that, I want to emphasize that too, because as we talk about healing, right, because people always want to say, well, what can we do? I also want us to be patient and compassionate with ourselves and realize just how much we're up against. This did not occur overnight. And it's like deeply entrenched, woven into every fabric of society. And so if we see ourselves like not being able to turn off the switch, right, then I think we can also give ourselves grace and knowing like, no, they invested billions, trillions of dollars and hundreds of years and millions of, you know, people power and manpower into creating this system. And so we can say a few affirmations on Monday, but it's going to be a lifelong process for most of us. And I think my goal is like playing the long game, looking at, those beautiful kids that came on screen earlier and, really saying, I'm really going to stay in the fight, even if I don't get as far as I want to get in my lifetime, because I know that they can carry the torch and just keep persevering in that direction. I know that was a lot.
That was heavy. Yeah, I mean, but on point, of course, and the intentionality behind colorism, the intentionality behind, categorizing us and then pitting us against each other. Ooh, it's brilliant. It's brilliant because we mess each other up. The question is, what do we do about it? How do we confront it? How do we address it when it's, especially in our close circles? What are ways that we can, how do you handle it? Because that's a real issue. A lot of people still just internalize it. We don't speak about it. We don't speak against it. We don't defend ourselves against it, even when we're talking to those closest to us. So how do we address that? What do you all think?
Yeah, what I think about that is that, like, how do you address it? Like, I think like there are all kinds of things that you can do, but I think the important thing is that you just open your mouth, like when stuff goes down, that you show like, okay, I'm not down with that. And that's, for instance, like when I see like a Black woman is spoken to in a certain manner, like as a Black man, I can sit back and do nothing, or I can interject and do something. And I'm the type that I'm always going to be there. And like just the fact that you do that, that's already a shock for people, because in our programming as Black men and women, we're also almost conditioned to like be opponents, to not support each other. So I already see the short circuiting happen in the brains of people. Like when I get in there, is that something happened? Like, oh, this is supposed to happen. Like we should be able to control his mind. Now that doesn't happen. That just seeing that fact alone already is a problem for them. So I think like, yeah, there are all kinds of things that you can do, but regardless of the tactics, like just the fact that you speak up, I think that's a very important thing. Just also to show the other person that support, like, yeah, you're not alone in this thing. I think that is something that is very helpful, because like it can be a very isolating experience, and there are a lot of people that might reach out to you later or after, say like, yeah, indeed, like we did not like what happened, but didn't do something in the moment. And I'm like, yeah, do something in the moment. And because like you can be scared, but the thing is like, if it's such a toxic environment, at some point you can also say like, okay, it's better to like remove yourself from that environment altogether than just stay in there. But like if you're, and I think also the thing with bystanders that don't do nothing, it's like, yeah, you're basically just a tool of the whole system that you're operating in, because like the whole system that we are, like, I often talk about the corporate plantation, but it's real. Like when you actually break it down, like the dynamics, the behavior patterns, they are exactly like plantation life. And yeah, if you just keep continuing that, then basically like you are not just you're damaging the other person, but you're also damaging yourself, because you're also denying yourself a large part of your humanity, because like there is no love in that plantation life, that mentality. There is no community in there. And so I think like just yeah, by speaking up when stuff goes down, that alone already is very disruptive. I see, because often it's not only a question like, because when you speak up, you can say, okay, how do you speak up? How do you do it? But just the fact that you speak up, that already is very disruptive, because in a lot of cases, people don't even speak up. They just let it pass by. And I think that's already very damaging. And I think, yeah, just as a sign to that person, like, you're not alone, you do have support in this thing. And we're going to, and also be just consistent, just keep showing up. Not just a one and done, but like all the time, like when it goes down, or all the time you see some person is not being treated right, whether it is in your organization or somewhere else. If you give me a signal, then yeah, people will, even though they might not want to address it, but if people keep speaking up, they will be forced to address it, because like you'll need to be dealing with not just only one person that you're trying to push down. You need to deal with more people than that. So I think that's one thing that I see and always try to do in these kinds of things, that I just show them that like, I'm not down with it and I do not accept it. And the program did not stick with me. And yeah, just keep, and it can get tiring in a sense, but at the same time, like, yeah, we don't really have the luxury to stop. And especially when you see those down with other people. Like I've also like visited a friend in the UK. Like the stuff that her children they experience in school, that's like it doesn't even seem like society is moving forward. Like the stuff that they encounter right now, it's so bad. I'm like, wow, this is and for that reason I'm also like, yeah, then it also reinforces even more that we really need to speak up in any way that we can. Because like otherwise, like yeah, for the other generations, it will not get better at all. So like Dr. Sarah said, like also like she doesn't know like what will be achieved in our own lifetimes, but at least like if we give a certain contribution, we can maybe make it a little lighter or easier for the next generation, at least so that they have the tools to be able to yeah continue the fight and also hopefully better cope and hopefully do also more of the healing. So yeah, I'll some thoughts from my side.
I like that you mentioned disrupt. I like that term. I like how it's being used a lot these days with, when it comes to changing mindsets, changing behaviors, and getting in there, speaking up, like you're saying. I like that. Aya, what about you? What do you think?
It's Aya. It's like Aya.
I'm sorry, Aya. Thank you. Oh, and I was like,
It's okay.
I was trying to get it. And I was like, okay, sorry. Aya.
No worries. I absolutely agree with Michael, and like I just wanted to say that because it is so true. Just even speaking up, but having the right language and not allowing yourself to be gaslit. Like it's like, oh, you've internalized anti-Blackness. Just even saying that, like just, oh, you've internalized anti-Blackness. That's why you're telling me right now that you don't like dark-skinned women. That's okay because you're actually dark-skinned. So that's, like you should work on that. Like just even saying that rather than going back and forth in this emotional, like, oh, like just saying that people are like, I'm like, it's, it's okay that you've embraced European beauty standards, but at the end of the day, I'm not European. So I'm not ever gonna look like that. Like, but what I wanted to share, because what Dr. Webb was talking about, Dr. Sarah was talking about is very heavy. And it's very clear to me as she was saying that. And so recently, like literally when I say recently, like in the last 3 weeks, I've been like obsessed with colorism. Like just, I've been really, it's been on, and one of the things that came to me just the other day, one of the things that came to me the other day is we really need to get to the core of it. And the core of it, and Dr. Sarah said it, like when she was saying, it's like the features are the proof that we're less than. So the darker you are is the proof that you're less than. The kinkier your hair, like the actual features are the proof that you're less than because it's so farther than the European standard, like the European phenotype or whatever. Now, what's interesting about that is that if we don't usurp that, it's a waste of time, anti-racism, right? Because why? And Dr. Sarah's talked about this, but I didn't really understand it until I was listening to someone. And it was just like on LinkedIn and we were talking, and just bear with me. Let me just get this point out. Grace, shh. So the person is mixed race, and the person was talking about somebody, it was actually on Michael's post. Somebody had said, well, the darker you are, the more the Europeans will hate you. And the person said, this mixed race person said, I don't even know they're mixed race. They told us that. There was no picture. So they said that. So they're like, well, actually, I don't think that's true because when I encountered white people, they were just as racist to me as soon as they found out that I was white. I mean, I had some black, like one of my parents was black, even though I'm really pale. But it's when I go to the, it's like when I talk to dark-skinned people in Britain, they're like hostile to me, right? He's like, they're hostile to me. But when I go to the continent, they're not hostile to me. So I wrote back to this person, and I don't even know if this could be a bot, but I wrote back to this person. I said, well, let's talk about it. I said, Africa, the continent, is the most color struck of all. The continent, the people on the continent are the most color struck. So the fact that you're pale is they put you on a pedestal. They want to be close to you so they can have because your proximity to whiteness is right there. And you still have some black blood. Listen, you're the best of the best. I said, versus that dark-skinned Britain person, they are bearing the brunt of racism. And so you're just kind of, that's what it is. You're high on the hierarchy. And the person wrote me back and he was like, wow, that just changed my perspective. Like, it was so interesting. He was like, wow, that just expanded my perspective. But here's the thing. So many, at least in America, so many, when they talk about Black history, it's almost 95% of the time, light-skinned, very fair, light-skinned people. Fair, like they don't even look Black. But here's the thing, if you don't want to address colorism and you don't want to get to that root that Blackness is a problem or less than whiteness, once y'all get access, y'all will be doing the same thing to me. Y'all will do the same thing to me because if I have to have curly hair and fair skin and look a certain way, like, so now so what I see, based on having all this education on colorism just now in the last 3 weeks, what I see now is, oh, y'all want to reimagine Blackness to mixed raceness. No, I'm Black. I'm Black. I'm Black. I don't have any mix. I'm not mixed with nothing. I'm Black. Like, so I was what I am, what Black people look like and whatever. That is a different category and there's nothing wrong with that. But y'all are still trying to gatekeep me. So at the end of the day, what can we do about it? People who look like me need to understand it's war on us. We either speak up or we will get erased. This is life or death. And so the reason why I feel that way strong is because my daughters are Black. They're Black. They are beautiful, ridiculously gorgeous. I really feel that way. But it's not until they went into this school system that the school people, the first thing these kids want to tell my children is, oh, you dark, oh, you Black, oh, what's wrong? Like, I'm like, wow, this is really, so they came home feeling some type of way. And here's the thing, I never prepared them. So when they came home telling me this, I was shocked. Why? I don't know why, but I was like, what? And I realized I have not prepared y'all for this jacked up world. And I can't do it. I can't do it. I'm not saying that the world's not jacked up, but if I don't speak up for people who look like me, they will erase us. They will reimagine it all over again. And then we'll still be at the bottom. I cannot. And so what we have to do is stop. Like, this is gonna sound crazy. I don't even deal with mixed race people anymore, in the sense of like, once you start looking a different way, I love you. You're part of my extended family. You're like my distant cousin. I got to go with dark skinned people. I'm dark skinned for life. Like, I have to, because it's like my survival and people who look like me and my children's survival depends on it, unless they choose to, like, at first I used to be very critical of people who would go outside of their waist, but now I realize why, because of the tangible benefits. So we're going to get erased. We are going to get erased if we don't deal with this now.
Dr. Sarah.
I can't.
Go on.
Yeah. Bringing the heat, bringing the fire. We need it. It's so refreshing. As someone who often feels like I'm the only one saying some of this stuff, right? I don't see enough other people around me. I talk about colorism so much because not enough people talk about it enough, but it's so on point. And I said, I don't have the privilege to prioritize racism over colorism, because since day one, when I started this, people have been saying we have bigger problems and, we need to look at racism, and this is a distraction. Colorism is a distraction from racism. I'm gonna say, yeah, if you light skin, because y'all good. If we solve racism, our light skinned folks are good. But I'm gonna be in exactly the same spot I am today. If we completely eliminate racism without addressing colorism, people like us are in the exact same position, socially, economically, financially, that we are today. And so I do not, because I am dark skinned, I do not see colorism as the quote unquote lesser issue. Thinking about the question about like how we move forward, a lot of times because even for light skinned people who aren't mixed race, like my sister, like she and I have the same mother and same father. So she ain't no more mixed than me, right? But even for our siblings who are not mixed race, but just happen to be lighter skinned, they also benefit from the racism first approach, right? And so regardless, and I also tell people too, it's precisely because racial identity is constructed and is so slippery and has evolved over time to meet the needs of the oppressors. Like, let's remember, not all people who are currently considered white were always considered white. Like, they will always change the game when it comes to racial classifications to suit their needs, to suit their agenda at that time. But what, you know, what's always going to stay the same, regardless of how you label it? My melanin, my pigment will always stay the same, whether you move the needle on who goes into what category, who's labeled as what check boxes you put on the census. Like, that might evolve, but people with my skin tone, people with darker skin tones than mine, people with my hair textures, my facial features, we gonna look the same, no matter what boxes we check in or you check in on the census. And so I always say, when we start shifting and using the lens of colorism first, then we might actually get somewhere. The other part, in terms of people who are lighter skinned, whether you identify as mixed or not, but I'm mainly thinking about like non-mixed light skinned people. We need, if you want to be accepted, or if you want to have sisterhood, if you want to have community with us, like, we don't owe you our trust. Because what has happened is, like, light-skinned people were not just innocent bystanders in colorism. Like, they actively sought out that privilege. They actively participated in discriminating against their brothers and sisters of darker hue. And so we have a reason as dark-skinned people to be distrustful, because we've seen it. It's not just a hypothetical, oh, if we saw racism, then y'all might do this. No, y'all have already proven that y'all have been doing that for generations, right? Excluding dark-skinned people from your schools, from your educational institutions, from your jobs. If you own a firm, you want all your receptionists to be light-skinned girls, right? Or mixed race girls. So we've already seen y'all's track record. And so I think, you know, to your point, this entitlement that light-skinned people have, that they just have to be embraced by darker skinned folks without reconciling or reckoning that history and that legacy, and accounting for how they are positioned in the hierarchy above us, because they want to have their cake and eat it too. It's like, we want y'all to just accept us whole cloth and no questions asked, but we gonna act like this system not oppressing y'all and not committing violence against y'all at the same time, right? But then on a personal level, because like you said, with the darker skinned guys who were on that panel you were talking about, like, even because I talk about even dark skinned people can internalize that hierarchy, right? I've known a lot of dark skinned people who have also thought light skin was more beautiful, right? Have also felt like they deserved to be in the shadow of the light skinned girl, the light skinned cousin. And so what we have to do as dark skinned people is, one, realize what, you know, Aya brought up, is that we are dying because of this system, right? We are participating in a system that is killing us and trying to erase us and eradicate us from the planet. But then two, I think once you identify the language and you realize that it is a construct, that it is a lie, that this was a narrative that someone made up, then you are actually able to take back your agency and say, well, okay, if they made that narrative and it was made up, then maybe I can make up a different narrative, right? And so a lot of times when I start helping people heal, it's about, where in your life have you been exposed to the harmful, distorted narratives and the narratives that stigmatize you or that misrepresent you? And then where are the narratives, if you don't have the ability to create them yourself in this moment, like, where are the narratives, where are the places you can go, like this call, for example, right? Like this, you know, community that Fatia is creating. I think when you and I first met, you talked about that's why you created this community. That's why you created your organization, was so that Black people can find affirming, empowering communities where they could see themselves apart from the anti-Black white supremacist narratives that are out there. So I think that's a big part of it, is saying, I'm going to stop supporting the TV shows. I'm going to stop supporting the music artists. I'm going to stop watching the music video. I'm going to stop, you know, voting for the politicians, right? And I'm going to go ahead and, because Aya got me fired up. So I'm going to stop saying that people like Kamala Harris represent me just because it's on trend, it's popular, right? Yeah, so I think lost my train of thought, but Yeah, I'll pause there because I know I've said a lot, and I'm sure that, you know, Michael, Aya, Patia have just as much to chime in on.
Can I just say something really quickly? Is that okay? Okay. So I want to say something really quickly. It's like one of the things that we can do, how can we change it, is we can have an expectation that we can have good things too as dark-skinned people. And I think Dr. Sarah said it perfectly when she said, sometimes we're like, sometimes we have internalized it so much that we step back. Okay, like this person, this light-skinned person does, and I love the construct piece because I mean, humans are like that anyway, right? Like we definitely are a construct. Like we just value what people look like. I mean, it just is what it is. But it is such a powerful construct because it's like now we are like, she deserves this or this person deserves this. And then the oppressive system, the narrative that they tell us, just like you were saying in the very beginning, they had to brainwash us to believe we should, for it to work, we also had to believe we deserved it. Excuse me, sweetheart. And so the thing that I have noticed is like people are outraged that I myself, as like, if I say that I deserve a good man, people are outraged. Like they're like outraged. Like, you know, if I say that just these things and I started to notice like, oh, that's only reserved for the girl that looks like Beyonce. No, that's for every woman. Like, that's for every woman. That's for every woman. Every woman, you know, like you should have a man that loves you. Like that's not just reserved for Beyonce or just reserved for beauty. Like, what is that? You know, and you can see it, the agitation of like, how dare you expect good things? And so one of the things I want to say is that as a people, and that's what, you said something, Dr. Sarah, that was real powerful because it is the construct. And it's like, how do we move forward? Because it's very powerful. Because I realize now that I have to keep thinking about it because it's not that I'm not for other people. It's just that I've got to be for me, be for us. And because I have to be for us, it sounds like when I'm saying it, it sounds so like divisionary, divisive, but it's like, if no one is standing up for Black women, Chris Brown can say, oh, get rid of the darkies, da, da, da. And people will just be like, oh, okay, whatever. I'm still listening to Chris Brown. Like, it's cool. No one says, that's not acceptable, bro. It's not acceptable to say that about any woman. And you don't need to target people who like naturally look like that when they're born. You don't need to target that. That's not cool. You could just not say anything. You can have your preference and live your life at your preference and not say anything derogatory for the other people. You don't have to do that. And so I think that it's so important that we allow ourselves to expect the best, to hope for the best. Like, and what I mean by that, like the actual real word for hope, which is having a confident expectation of good, not like what people think, like, I hope it works out. Like hope actually means to have a confident expectation of good and to have that for ourselves, regardless of what's going on.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I don't even know how to, I can't add anything.
Can I say something then? I think
Absolutely.
I totally agree. Indeed, like that you need to, and that also I think has to do with like programming. That you need like the expectations that we have of ourselves. They need to be healthier because we are also programmed basically as dark-skinned people then to think that we deserve less, and we then also start to behave in that manner as if we are less deserving of things. And indeed, that's something that we need to change within ourselves. That expectation that not actually we do deserve the good things, but then also to have like the boundaries with other people, like when they step over those things, that we then also believe that we indeed are also deserving to speak out against those negative things, so that even when you assert your boundaries, you don't necessarily know if they will change their behavior, but just the fact that you show them that, okay, this is how I feel about these matters, then you at least give that signal to those other people that indeed, like, we do not think that it's okay. And I also think that it's actually good to, as dark-skinned people, to like also have like focused, just not only just on yourself, but more like we indeed look at the systems. The systems are basically set up like that. The system of racism is set up that Black people would invest all their energy to make sure that white people thrive, basically. No energy actually directly at yourself. Then we see in the system of colorism, you basically say like the dark-skinned people are basically set up to like pour all the energy into the system of light-skinnedness at the expense of yourself, like, because what you are is not worthy, so you're not directing any energy there. But that doesn't make any sense, because like if you're directing all your energy to something that is not you, then indeed you will die off. Yeah, we will be then erased, because like even nothing that, not even what they are doing, but just what we ourselves are doing, like even our own energy is not flowing to ourselves then. So I think that's indeed very important to like, also focus energy on yourself to make sure that you thrive. And I think that's for me also like the main thing that I noticed, because like, I have an analytical mind, because like I am a data scientist, but I'm also, I love history, but data and history and English are all connected. So I always look at things through analytical eyes. But then we see like, okay, some things that I see that I personally do differently. If it's like, I do embrace like our own, for instance, one important thing I will see like is like, when you look at where we came from, our history, it transcends slavery, because we also had like histories way before that. But just when you also look like how we are programmed as Black people to talk about our own culture, like even if you do not adhere to like the religious or spiritual practices of our ancestors, that does not mean that you need to talk in like a derogatory manner about those practices. But that I see a lot with a lot of Black people, like they are so brainwashed into Christianity or another of the mainstream beliefs, that they are talking very negatively about the other practices. And I'm like, it doesn't matter like what practices I adhere to, but I'm never going to talk negatively about the practices of my ancestors, because like, those were the practices that sustained them. Those were the practices that them, survived so that I could be here today. So, and I think that people also don't realize what they do, but they're so, focused on, again, putting the energy into something else or somebody else, that they don't see that they are damaging themselves. Because like, if you come from that and all the things that you say negatively about those other people, you're actually saying about yourself. So, like, for example, if when light-skinned people, they talk negatively to dark-skinned people, they are actually hurting themselves, because they came from that. It's also their ancestors. And a lot of, like, we talk about the mixed race and the light-skinned, but for instance, when you just look at the light-skinned Black people, like, they also need to realize, like, a lot of them, like, there are also light-skinned people in Africa, but a lot of the light-skinned people in the diaspora, that was a result of rape. So they also need to realize, like, when they are so proud of their light skin and when they are so much focused on putting white on a high pedestal, realize that you are putting rape on a high pedestal, because like that is why you are the way that you are. And those were the things. Like in 2020, there was a journalist in the Washington Post. She made an article because she said, like, I can go back several generations, and she, like, on paper all of them were Black. But still, when I look at her own skin, she like she's very light skinned. And what she said, like, basically, I have rape colored skin. That's how she called it, because she said, like, it was never consensual, because, like, in living memory, she only has Black ancestors. So all the white that came in there, that was non-consensual. So when people are so proud of that, then I'm like, you're basically, celebrating a history of rape. And is that really what you want to do? So I think, like, when you look at all those behaviors, the dysfunctional behaviors within colorism and racism, you see, like, there's a lot of, like, morals and values are totally lost in there, because, like, when you look what you're actually then holding there, that is very, very unhealthy. So some additional thoughts.
And you went extremely deep with that. I've never even really thought about that. That's so heavy, and gosh. And then that would take you really deep into the psychological effects of, that action of rape. And okay, all right, it's just a few of you on here, but my God.
I want to go in a little bit more in terms of how we get free. And, Aya talked about believing and hoping for better and more. And I also think, too, just having the audacity to be you without apology as a dark-skinned person, like in all of your full self, showing up in spaces where they don't expect you to feel like you belong, right? They expect you to, limit yourself from those opportunities. And I talked in the past a lot about selfies. And I used to say, you know, even when Black women and white women are doing the same thing, they're not really doing the same thing, because it means something totally different if a white woman posts a selfie and a Black woman posts a selfie, right? But the same is true in terms of colorism. And so when I was posting my little carousel of photos the other day, and I was telling my sister, I was like, oh, I don't want to come off as conceited, but I was like, but it's time for people to see dark-skinned people being conceited, right? Like, it's time for people to see a dark-skinned person feeling worthy of being seen. And so I think that is like, it has to start with our own bodies, right? Like, I am going to wear my bright yellow. I'm going to wear my red lipstick. I'm going to wear my afro. I'm going to, you know, soak up the sun. Yeah, I might put on sunscreen, but I'm also soak up the sun because I don't want melanoma, but I also am not afraid to get darker, right? And so I think, you know, when we have like even parents who want to say like, oh, I tell my children they're beautiful, but I myself haven't figured out how to live in my body as if I feel beautiful. And I think sometimes we focus on like the things we have to explicitly say or explicitly teach, but realizing that just the way we show up in our bodies. And so many people have told me like, just your presence, like and I know this is true for so many people on this call and so many people who might be listening to the recording, like a little girl seeing you embodying self-love, even if you never even realizes that she sees you, like you might be minding your own business and she sees you from afar, but if she sees you embodying self-love as a dark-skinned person, I think that is also like a radical place to start. And it's sad, you know, I remember when I went natural in high school, someone said, oh, Sarah's so brave. And like that, ever since then, for the past like 20 or 30 years, I've been like, the fact that it takes courage for me to let my hair grow from my scalp the way it naturally grows from my scalp tells me all I need to know about, you know, the fact that we have been conditioned to really like hate our essence. You know what I mean? But I think that courage to be yourself, to let your skin be its natural color, to let your hair be its natural texture, your nose be its natural shape, your eyes be their natural color. I think just that decision alone is so radical, and it can have ripple effects for the people around us.
Thank you. I mean, melanin is definitely not a curse like some believe it to be, or like it's been made to seem like it is. It is a gift. Melanin is like gold. It's like being dipped in gold. Oh my God. Okay. I'm a fan of beautiful dark skin. My personal preference, I love me a dark man. I intentionally have a beautiful dark daughter because, and I want her to grow into really loving who she is from the outside in and vice versa. She doesn't see that yet. And I don't understand really why she's not embracing who she is when she, from home, from her family, from her close circle, she's never told she's not beautiful. But of course, those external influences, that is quite often most damaging to a lot of us. So from this dialogue we've had today, appreciate you all. So educate ourselves, educate each other. Let's disrupt that negativity. Confidence is key,
And can I say really quickly, because I do have two small daughters, and I'll just share a really short story. So I wear a lot of wigs, right? And my actual natural hair is always real low. And I used to have locks a long time ago, and then I cut all my locks off, and I just like short hair. And but because and I've worn my short hair too, and then I don't know. But anyway, so it's so funny because my daughters have this like great, like they have so much hair, and I always do their hair. And one day they were like, "Mommy, we like your hair. We want our hair to be like your hair." And I was like, "What, this wig, girl? Bye." I was like, "Girl, your hair is everything." Like, girl, and they kind of looked at me. They're like, "Well, then why do you wear it?" And it was such, it was like a nuclear question. And so what I wanted to say to you, Fatia, just when we talk about your daughter, it's like, there is so much warfare against dark-skinned people. Like, I mean, it's like unbelievable. Like, and I think when you're in it, when you're in that skin, especially as a woman, because one of the things I'm even realizing is like even why it's different for dark-skinned men versus dark-skinned women. Like people in a minute have no problem being like, I love me a chocolate man. They have no, it's like really like, I'm not saying it doesn't affect them, but to me, it doesn't seem like, it seems to be fine. Like it's like not a problem, but it is so rare to hear that. And actually people are constantly saying the opposite of women. But the root of that is that woman's value is just based on what they look like and the perception of whoever says is beauty. And that's even like the core of that. And that is so like embedded in the fabric of humanity. And so I think like I love what you're saying, and it's not that I don't agree, but it's deeper than that. It's not just self-confidence. It's like literally you're in a war zone every day. Like you're literally in a war zone every day. Like just like Dr. like just being just I could just show up and people are warfaring against me. Just like going out of their way to tell me negative like when I would wear locks, going out of their way, like stopping what they're doing to come to me to tell me to feel the entitlement to tell me that my existence is a problem because I literally look like how I was created out the womb. Like I don't
And
it is a real warfare.
sometimes your confidence is the reason they're going out of their way to try to take you down a few notches. Sometimes they are more upset when you show up confident. They get even more offended. How dare you be confident and dark skinned and have locks, right? Or how dare you be confident and be dark skinned and a woman with an afro? Sometimes that makes them even more mad when you come to them.
That's true. I definitely agree with that.
And just to say that, I think for Black people of all complexions, for all of us, for Black people, anyone, whether you're mixed, it doesn't, for Black people, I think it's time for us, and I'm not saying we don't, and I'm not saying we can no longer be gaslit by the system that this warfare does not having an emotional impact. Like we just can't keep, like we don't, I don't need a white man to tell me that this is emotionally, like it's warfare sometimes for me to get out of bed. It's warfare for me to show up because some Black man is going to go out of his way to say something ridiculous to me. And I have to even just deal with that. Like, it's cool if your preference is white girls. I'm not even mad at you. Like, I'm happy for you. Like, I'm happy for you. Like, I'm not mad at you. Why do you feel the need to come and tell me that? Like, we have got to, as a people who want this to end, acknowledge just how hard it is to endure. And we can't just keep saying, and this is not an attack, but we can't just keep saying it's the confidence. Like, we just can't. Like, it's so much deeper than that. It's like, did you, like, what Dr. Sarah said in the first 5 minutes was like, by the time I was hearing that, because I knew it was all true, but it was like, God, everything is rigged against us. It's not, it's like, that's like when white people say, oh, you know, if you just think, if you just attract, the law of attraction, like it's just because you're looking for racism that you see it. It's like, girl, bye. So I want us to really embrace that this system is really impacting us and it sucks.
It is. And I see what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. I do still say, I mean, you got to have confidence. It's like an armor. It's like having armor. So that confidence, that self-love is necessary in order to battle all of that you're describing. If you walk around and you're a person who's lacking confidence, and then you've got all these arrows coming at you, how do you battle it? So confidence.
I agree. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have confidence. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying you should. Of course you should. I do. But what I think I'm saying in addition to that, it's an addition. It's not a subtraction. It's not an instead. In addition, I think I need to make space for a person really struggling. Like I just think in addition, it's not a subtraction. We got to make space for this is heavy, and how can we support each other through it?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Maybe one thing that, if I can add to that, I think because I'm totally in alignment because I get you. I hear what you're saying. I think also like the fact that you mentioned Black men, because I also see certain patterns there. And I think I think what's like, when we get real, we also need to be real about the fact that Black men still operate within the patriarchy, and within the patriarchy, they are still, because they are male, they're still higher up in that sense than Black women. And they really also utilize that privilege, because there's also privilege there. And when you look at how colorism affects Black men and Black women, you see a stark difference there. But the difference is not only that how the outside world treats us, it's also like how dark-skinned men themselves act towards dark-skinned Black women. You specifically see that in the media entertainment industry. That's like clear as day. You see like dark-skinned rappers, or when you look at Jamaica, dark-skinned dancehall artists with like very light-skinned, not only very light-skinned people in their music videos, but they explicitly say that they have a preference for the very light-skinned ones. So I think that's an important thing to also be real about. And it's important then that also like Black men, that they also then disrupt that. Like I said, like speak up, because like if you're only as Black women only speaking up, that alone is already very isolating. And it's like, yeah, are we the only one that care? Then that's why I found it important that like Black men also speak up. And that's also again like I see the power of disruption. Like I see sometimes people, I see their mind short circuiting. I see like, okay, why is he doing the way he does? Like how is he talking the way he does? Like that is not how the program should be. But I think that's a very important thing that they're also. I'm more focused on us. I'm not focused on them. So like here is also a healing that needs to take place between Black men and women in that sense, that they also need to realize as men that like that behavior pattern is unhealthy. And on the other side, I would also be good to let them know like, yeah, you might think that you're all that, but if you have this, because it's again psychological, it's almost a pathological preference then for light skin or white women. Like it doesn't make any sense, because like I am all focused on Black people, black, but that doesn't mean that I exclude white people. It's like if you're really healthy and really rooted in your Blackness, that for instance doesn't mean that you hate whiteness. It's like you just look at each other, then really like, okay, you're it's your outer shell, but that doesn't mean that I hate it because of that. But when you are in a situation that you like, okay, you're actually like hating foreign people because of their skin color or because of their skin tone, that by itself is pathological. It's not a preference, it's pathological, because it doesn't make sense. Like you said, like even if you have a preference, like why must I go out of my way to like bring somebody else down? Like that is not healthy behavior. And I think that's an important thing also with this, like where you, because like I said, I like to break things down. I am analytical. Where you analyze colorism and racism, then when you analyze personality disorders such as narcissistic personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, for instance, you will see that a lot of the characteristics are the same when it comes to the manipulation, the gaslighting, the cognitive dissonance, etc. So the behavior that you see within colorism, like the stuff that you talk about, like people go out of the way to tell you something, that is very unhealthy. That is very much like a disorder. And I'm not saying that because sometimes people then might say, like, are you saying that the racist colorism that is mental disorder? No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that it's a disorder all of itself. So when I see a person, like you can say, like you have racism, fucked up personality disorder, I can say that, for instance, because that is what it is. It's not healthy behavior at all. It's not healthy for the other person, but also not healthy for yourself. And yet, like I said, when you analyze it, because I'll have to break it down, like when you look at personality disorders, the behaviors, the manipulation tactics, etc., all those narcissistic personality disorder, you will see that it's very much the same, that the way that they behave then. Just to in summary, it's pathological, the behavior, and it's diabolical also in nature. So let's just leave it at that. But I wanted to add that.
I think that would bring us into a whole other conversation there. We should do another dialogue on this, just on what you're talking about. Okay, you all are powerhouses. I appreciate you greatly. We are at the close of our time. Went over a little bit, but it was definitely worth it. I appreciate you. If you have any closing words you want to share, please feel free to do so at this time.
I just want to say thank you, Fatia, for this event. It's so funny because I was waiting for this event, and then minutes were, I could not find it. And then I went to DM Mike. I went to DM him to be like, hey, do you know about this event? And then he had already DM'd me. So that was dope. So I really love that. Thank you for having this space, and I appreciate. So I'm not actually familiar with you. I just knew about this event through because I followed Dr. Sarah. So I'm looking forward to engaging with you. And Michael, thank you so much. There's, you just brought so much to the conversation, and I really appreciate you. Like, I don't think you understand. I just appreciate you because, when we heal each other, we can do anything. It's like if we work together, if we, if more Black men and more Black women were like healing each other, their skin tone, but and more lighter skinned people were healing. Like if we were all like trying to go out of each other's way to see each other and celebrate each other, I mean, we could do more in 10 years than people did in 40 years, And Dr. Sarah, you're just brilliant. And, you're changing lives, like you're just brilliant. Like you're really, like the work that you're doing is, I don't know, like maybe I'm late. I could just be late, but it's just so groundbreaking to me. It's changing my life. And I think I just needed to hear it so I could better prepare my children. But it means the world to me. It means the world to me. So I just want to say thank you to you too.
Thank you. Thank you. And you're welcome. And thank you for all that you shared. But you definitely added to this conversation. And I look forward to continuing, connection with you as well. Michael.
I'm just going to say thank you as well. Just express gratitude for this space, gratitude that there are comrades in this effort. Like when I started, it did feel like a lonely route. So like coming on here and not having to carry the conversation because everyone else in the conversation is just as equipped to like hit home, drive home the points. And I'm like, yes, thank you, finally. So it's like, it's part of my healing journey is to meet and connect with other people that don't gaslight me, to meet and connect with other people who give me perspective, who open up and share their experiences and their insights. And so thank you, Fatia, and thank you, Aya, and thank you, Michael, and anyone else who's watching the playback.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. I also want to thank you all. I think it's nice indeed to be in a space where people that get it. Like when I talk to you separately, Sarah, also like yeah, you're a real one. I noticed it. I also because I also look at spiritual aspect, energetic aspect, and I see like, okay, yeah, that's a real one. So I'm like, how didn't I know you before? Because we only connected quite recently, but there's also immediately something there. And also Fatia, I like that you, because this it's a heavy topic, and also like in very sense it's a lonely topic, because like the resistance that you get is from our own people. Like, let me just put it like that, because like when I talk about colorism, like all my colorism experiences have been from Black people. I've never encountered in the Netherlands like white people that are like, well, I have more preference for. It would be more the other way around. Like when I have like white people that have a preference for Black people, they are like they want like that real chocolate. That's the one that I've seen. So like that's also the difficult thing with this. Like, okay, we are fighting against our own people, and that's a hard thing with colorism. So in that sense, also good to find people indeed that are dark skinned and then actually get it. And one other thing that I want to, because what Aya mentioned, like one of the things like what I noticed also like is when it comes to energy, like how we can heal each other. Like when I see like the connection that we have is also spiritual. Like, and we've been like cut off from our spirituality, basically. But when we go back to that and also really see like how we indeed can feed each other and heal each other just by being the way we are, just by like the way that like we do the things that we do, just seeing that and just experiencing that's all very, very energizing. And it's like I love language a lot, but language is like, I keep going back to language. Language is really a vessel. It also connects us to our own history. And like when it comes to like the whole colonization process, out of which whole racism and colorism flowed, like there was a saying that, like, for instance, like the bullet was used for the physical subjugation, but language was the means for the spiritual subjugation. And by cutting us off from our own languages, we were cut off from our culture, from our religions. For instance, like by making like, for instance, like the European languages, the languages within the schools and corporations, then yeah, those languages became like the languages of power. So I think just by going also back to like, okay, our own our real thing, I think that's helps, and also by like really realizing that like it isn't really even about like, okay, who is higher, who is better, but just like it is like it is your own thing. Like you don't need to, even if you speak English or even if you are Christian or whatever, you do not need to look down upon the other languages, because like there's also a part of you, and the same then applies also like the way that we look. You don't need to look down upon that, and but I think it's important to also look at all the other aspects, because like when people are hated upon because they are darker skinned, all the other things are connected to that. So it's the dark skin that means like, okay, the different texture, the African languages, or the patois that you see me talking a lot, or all the other Creole languages, or all the other ways of doing that are considered black. All of that is then together hated upon. So when you then show up as dark skinned with natural hair or dreadlocks, and you talk your own language, and you, even if you don't adhere to the spiritual practice of your ancestors, but you don't talk disrespectfully about them, that's already a very disruptive thing. And that's something that I like to do. Like I just show up like me. And that's already this, because they are like you should look down upon yourself. You should look down upon those other people. So I think that that's an important thing. A final thing, maybe after a long, what I want to say is that even if you don't adhere to everything from your culture or your ancestors, you do not need to talk disrespectfully about it, because by doing that, you are diminishing not just them, you're diminishing yourself, and you're also empowering the other class, because they don't even need to do the work then, because you are doing the work for them. So those are my final words.
Thank you. Thank you, my brother Michael from across the pond. Thank you for connecting me to these sisters here also. Dr. Sarah, yes, you are absolutely brilliant. And you know, we can talk forever. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to conclude this session number 4. And let's just stay in touch. Let's keep it going, and everyone enjoy the rest of your weekend.
You too. Thank you.
Talk to
Bye-bye.
you. Thank you.